Howdy y'all, I'm Tim and welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. Smash that like button if you like Japanese maples. We appreciate you subscribing to our YouTube channel.
Konnichiwa y'all, I'm Matt. Today we're going to be talking about a fun topic that maple collectors love to talk about. Today we're going to be talking about comparing different Acer Shirasawanum full moon maples.
Guys, we're standing in a pile of a lot of 10-gallon Japanese maples, and you can come shop these if you contact our office. We're in East Flat Rock, North Carolina, and go ahead and schedule an appointment. We're going to start doing that on Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 12:30. So you can schedule that with our office, but you can shop these in person if you do that. And we've got some really cool Acer Shirasawanums we're going to be talking about today that will be available if you schedule an appointment.
Guys, depending on when you're watching this video, we're actually shooting this in 2023. We're going to have a killer open house here on Memorial Day, and all this will be available in person. So feel free to come out and see us then as well. Let's get into it. Let's talk about some Acer Shirasawanums. And what do you like about Acer Shirasawanums, Tim?
Acer Shirasawanum, the full moons, they're amazing. Now, for the longest time, they were lumped in with Acer japonicums. In the 1980s, which really wasn't that long ago, they started dividing out Shirasawanums and Acer japonicums and put them as two distinct species, which they clearly are. The Acer Shirasawanums have a round, full moon style leaf. And it's very rounded and it's very unique and very different when it comes to many Japanese maples.
Now, Acer Shirasawanums are a native of Japan, and we're actually standing here in one of our all-time favorite ones. We're standing next to Acer Shirasawanum Moonrise. The cultivar name on this one is Mun001. It's introduction by our good friend and one of our mentors, Carl Munn. Now, this introduction is an excellent example of how colorful Acer Shirasawanums can be. These full moon Moonrise are just starting to leaf out. They'll actually get a ton of this apricot to pink red new growth over top the bright yellow older growth. This one is one of those showstopper plants that is a must for any garden.
Now, one of the things I like about Acer Shirasawanums, Matt mentioned it a little bit, is these are just starting to leaf out. Many of these other Japanese maples leafed out much earlier. The Acer Shirasawanums, they can avoid a little later threat of frost because they do leaf out later than many of the other Japanese maples. So some of those first frosts that you get in the spring that may cause damage to some plants, a lot of times the Acer Shirasawanums avoid that because they are leafing out later. But the color patterns on Moonrise are what draw everybody to it. You have lime green down below, and then you have this red, pink red malting that keeps happening all across the summer with new growth flushes that keep coming across, maturing to lime green with malting pink reds in there. I mean, the colors on this are exceptional, and it is one of the very best colors on any Acer Shirasawanum.
Right, great oranges to red in the fall color. I don't know a single gardener who's seen this leaf shape and isn't attracted to it. It's a very attractive leaf shape. It's got that rounded overall leaf shape to it, very indicative of the species Acer Shirasawanum. And I believe this was a seedling from Autumn Moon with even better colors. It actually exceeds Autumn Moon for its heat tolerance here in the South. You can check out our full video on Moonrise. We did an older one here on our channel, but there's a gorgeous large specimen at our Maple Wood Gardens there, and it's something you definitely want to check out. But this is one of the, I would say probably the most popular of all full moon maples we're starting out with here. It is highly sought after for so many reasons. It's definitely a little bit more durable than Autumn Moon or Aureum here in the Deep South. We do those, they're great plants, but you do have to site those with a little bit more shade. I've seen this one outperform those in sun, definitely here in zone 6B up to zone 8. Zone 9, you're definitely going to need to protect this one. And check your heat indexes because zones can be funky. Really rated on how cold it gets now, how hot it gets. But this one is definitely more heat tolerant and more humidity durable than some of the older Acer Shirasawanums.
And there aren't many selections of Acer Shirasawanum. And I think that's one of the reasons why people are so attracted to collecting them, because you can actually collect almost all of them. But Moonrise is one that if you just have a maple garden, you got to have one of these in your garden because it is so unique and different. I know Brian says this is one of his favorite all-time Japanese maples. And it's no wonder, it's one of ours too. The color patterns on this, how durable it is, it gives you a lot of what people like about Autumn Moon with a little more durability to heat, a little more vigor in its growth habit. But the Acer Shirasawanums are spectacular in their own right, and Moonrise is a showstopper when it comes to Acer Shirasawanum.
Yeah, shout out to Carl and Shirley Munn. They're mentors of ours. Carl is a legend in the nursery industry, and Moonrise is probably his most famous plant. I think it's safe to say that was one of the pinnacles and probably one of the most popular Japanese maples in the last 30 years. Acer Shirasawanum Moonrise it's easy to see why this one is so highly sought after. This tree is going to make an awesome pairing with pretty much any other plant in the garden. If you have a very green garden, you know, Moonrise is going to brighten that up. If you have a very red garden, Moonrise is going to brighten that up. So it's going to bring the eye in. It's going to be a focal point planting. You're going to want to put this one somewhere that you can interact with it up close, but also somewhere that contrasts it nicely. Now, putting this anywhere in a maple garden is going to work because it looks great texture-wise and color-wise with everything.
Yeah, Moonrise is a plant you're going to really need in your garden. For an Acer Shirasawanum, it's one you can't live without. I mean, you got to put a Moonrise in your garden. We've got them often in 1 gallon so we can ship to you if you can't. Come in. If we're sold out of it currently on the website, schedule an appointment, come get a 10 gallon.
Guys, it could save your life.
But you can also go in and click notify me to be notified when we make it available. This is one we constantly try to keep in stock on MrMaple because this is a beautiful and amazing plant that you should really grow.
I didn't know this one was life-saving. We may have to open up more. Let's check out another full moon Japanese maple. Hey guys, we're here with Acer Shirasawanum 6910, sometimes referred to as Holland or Holland 6910.
Yeah, the unique thing about this plant is it has more of a traditional Acer Shirasawanum leaf. So this may be more of what you'd find if you were out in the wild in Japan looking at Acer Shirasawanum. This full moon rounded leaf is very typical of what you think of the species of Acer Shirasawanum.
Now, this tree is interesting because it is one of the closest to the species. It reminds me very much of what Tim and I saw hiking through some of the mountain ranges in Japan, looking at native Acer Shirasawanums. I think it's a must-have for any Acer Shirasawanum collector, especially if you want some of those early Acer Shirasawanum full moon genetics.
Now, these are just leafing out here in western North Carolina, and their leaves are just cut down a little bit. Again, being an Acer Shirasawanum that leaves out later, it's going to be a Japanese maple that's great for putting in the areas that are frequently has frost, because these will leaf out later and avoid some of those early frosts. Now, this will continue to open up to give that traditional full moon style leaf as this tree continues to leaf out. The fall color on 6910 is yellows to oranges, making this tree a really good bright green tree to put out in the landscape that gives you some classic fall colors. You know, a lot of times in Japanese gardening, they use those greens in traditional Japanese gardening. They give a good summery feel. And then in the fall, you really enjoy the seasons, the changing of the seasons. And that's exactly what you get with Acer Shirasawanum 6910.
Guys, one of the defining characteristics for many nurserymen on Acer Shirasawanum are that the seeds aim upward. And this being probably not much of a hybrid, this is probably more your traditional Acer Shirasawanum. A lot of those seeds are going to be aiming upward. I don't think it's a defining characteristic. I can think of several that break that exception on trees that have seeds that aim up, but it's certainly something you see more common and more prevalent in full moon Japanese maples, especially Acer Shirasawanums. You can see here a lot of those flowers are little bouquets above those leaf clusters. So you actually get these interesting red flowers on this one over top of the green, and those will form those samaras. So you'll start to get those seed pods over top of that. And they could also be a really nice kind of shrimp pink to bright red, which gives this tree a bouquet-like appearance. I think the seed pods on this one are an added benefit and really give it, you know, a flowering look to it. I think the seed pods are even more showy than the flower.
Now in zones 7B and 8 and 9, you might want to give 6910 some protection from the hot afternoon sun. Here in western North Carolina, we can probably grow this in full sun, but you really need to watch your heat indexes because that does change based on your heat index. But Acer Shirasawanum 6910, another great full moon Japanese maple you can really add in your garden, something special, unique, and more of your traditional Acer Shirasawanum.
Now this one's going to have more of a rounded canopy as it fills out. A lot of the Acer Shirasawanums will. They tend to be very dense, full plants, very multi-stemmed in their approach, so they make great focal point plantings. They also pair well with so many other Japanese maples because of that texture. I mean, if you put a lace leaf near this, they're going to contrast so distinctly. It just makes a great plant in the landscape, and it's definitely something that's going to draw the eye in and be a talking piece in your garden.
So guys, let's go check out another full moon Japanese maple.
All right, guys, we're here with likely a hybrid Shirasawanum, maybe has some influence from palmatum on it. Another full moon maple, Acer Shirasawanum Sensu.
Now, Sensu was originally found by Jim Baggett. He was a professor at Oregon State University, and it really originally had the name on it of JB50. Now, him and Dr. Al Mosley, they took this seedling to Talon Buchholz, and it later got introduced by Talon Buchholz into the nursery trade as Acer Shirasawanum Sensu. Sensu is Japanese for moving fan.
What's cooler than a moving fan?
But it looks a lot like a Japanese traditional fan if you look at the leaf itself. It has that full moon style leaf, but unlike many of the other full moon Japanese maples, this one has a little more deeply incised leaves.
So this was a seedling found, a chance seedling actually found by Jim Baggett of Oregon State. Tim mentioned that, but one interesting tidbit about that is that this was a seedling from Palmatifolium. Now, Palmatifolium may be an interesting plant because a lot of hybrid Shirasawanum and Palmatum cultivars do originate from this. Cor van Gelderen told me that the original Trompenberg is actually a seedling from Palmatifolium as well. So maybe an entryway into newer, more interesting full moon maples. Now, this is an excellent tree that's going to reach about 8 foot in 10 years, so a little smaller overall stature. It does have a semi-pendulous look to it, so a lot of those branches are going to go upward, but then kind of hang down from the tree. It makes an awesome pairing with something like Red Dawn as well, which is a red full moon maple. You're going to get a lot of contrast, but similar shapes.
Now, one of the things I love about Sensu is the salmon pink new growth. I mean, you can get some salmon pink new growth on this, on red stemming, that gives this plant something a little bit extra with those fan-like leaves. I mean, this plant gives a very unique feel for an upright Japanese maple with more of a traditional Shirasawanum style, but a semi-pendulous habit with that. And so it's very unique and very different in all of its growth habit.
Guys, our algorithm shows that a lot of you still aren't subscribed. So if you will, please take a second, subscribe to the Mr. Maple Show. We add daily Japanese maple content here on our YouTube channel, 7 days a week. So there's always something interesting and new. We also add 10 new plants every single Tuesday at 10. It's actually 20, but sign up for those emails to get notified of all the cool plants that list every single week here on MrMaple.com.
Take care.
God bless.
And have an awesome day.